We're at Big 12 Football Media Days, Day 2, and we're talking with Joel Klatt of Fox Sports. Joel, just a nice general open-ended question. What's your assessment of the Big 12 this year?
I think it's much deeper than people expect. Right now, all the sentiment, at least among the media and most of the fan bases, is that it's a top-heavy conference that has two really great teams and then a bunch of teams no one thinks much of right now. In reality, I really believe that there's 4 top-line teams in this conference. TCU is going to be starting the year at number 2 in the country. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to stay there because, quite frankly, they don't have even the best roster in the conference. What they have is the most talented and experienced quarterback. And I'm not going to try to minimize that. Trevon Boykin's a great player, and he's going to give them a chance to be very good. But Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Oklahoma, I think top to bottom have a better roster than TCU. And it remains to be seen if any 3 of those teams are going to get consistent or great quarterback play. If any one of those 3 gets great quarterback play, I think that that's one of your champions because of the depth and completeness of the roster as opposed to TCU, which is having to replace a lot of guys, including Paul Dawson on the defensive side. So a much deeper conference than people think, and I think the dark horse for me is Oklahoma. I know it's hard to say that as a guy that grew up in this conference to say dark horse Oklahoma, but I think this year's Sooners could be very similar to what last year's TCU team was with a new offensive coordinator, potentially an explosive offense, and a roster that's very good, very deep, and is going to have an experienced secondary. So Bob Stoops could be onto something this year. I think that they could have a bit of a resurgence.
Well, we're at Day 2 of the media days here. You've been talking to a number of coaches and kind of heard almost everybody talking about Big 12 football this season. Any takeaways just from this event here the last 2 days?
You know, it's every year there's always something that stands out to me, and I think this year what stands out is just how committed every program is to trying to win at the top level. And it goes all the way down to even Kansas, Wendell. They're trying to do the right things to get themselves out of a position that right now is precarious. That doesn't mean that they're going to win 5 ball games because they're not this year. They're not good enough on their roster. But they've done the right things in terms of staff hires and infrastructure to potentially set themselves up for long-term success. The same could be said about West Virginia. The same could be said about Iowa State with their stadium renovations that I'll see in week 2 when they host Iowa. Every team is committed to winning. You're seeing that across college football. Look at the SEC West. Every coach making $4 million. That's an insane number. But this is something that struck me when I got to Big 12 Media Days. You have this perception that it's going to be top-heavy and it's kind of the same old status quo, but it's really not. Right now, this conference has 10 teams that are very committed to trying to get to the top level.
Well, yesterday you and Fox made some news. You got moved up to the #1 analyst spot. Obviously, you've been brought in to get Gus Johnson to be a little bit more enthusiastic. That's the main reason.
Right.
But your ascension in broadcasting has been amazing. We've known you for quite some time. Talk a little bit about the chance to be the #1 guy as far as analyst on Fox college football broadcast this year.
I could not be more excited. You know, I've been really fortunate ever since I was done school to not only break into this business, but then get afforded some opportunities to do very cool things. Going back to you and I sitting on the concourse in Oklahoma City doing Big 12 baseball tournament. I think that looking back, this was always a dream of mine, was to be in this seat and to work with a guy like Gus. I could not be more excited. He is an absolute star, a wonderful person. I think that we're going to get along really well, and hopefully we sit back and allow you to enjoy some of the better games that this conference and others have to offer. It's one of the things that I hope that I do this for a really long time. I consider myself a really lucky guy.
That's Joel Klatt of Fox Sports as we're wrapping up things here at Big 12 Football Media Days for the Big 12 Digital Network. I'm Wendell Barnhouse.